Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We've got a good episode for you today. Chris Riesenberg, marketing director at Racetech Suspension and Engines. Man, he's a marketing mind. He's somebody that, after we hit stop on the record of this podcast, we actually just continued to chop it up talking marketing. He's somebody that doesn't just do it because it's his job. He enjoys that aspect of what he does for Racetech. He's always looking for new ways to push the envelope, new ways to progress, how Racetech brands themselves and grows the revenue of the business through its marketing avenues. Somebody that I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Many of you probably know Chris, but if you do or you don't, this is a look inside just his marketing mind that you may or may not have gotten to take a look at. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I think you will as well. Housekeeping really quick. Look, if you haven't subscribed to RacerX, now is the time to do it. You can get 3 issues for just $2.99. That's print and digital. Or look, it is what it is right now. If you're really trying to save the dough because of everything going on with COVID-19, you can get digital only for just 99 cents, and they're going to run that until June 10th. You can get that deal at racerxonline.com/subscribe. Man, there's signs of normalcy coming back. I'm pretty excited about it, not only for selfish reasons, I want to go racing, but obviously for the economy. Everybody listening, that's been affected by this, we're thinking about you, and the signs of, things starting to get back to normal is a good sign for everybody. The Moto Fight Club that happened this week, it was awesome just being able to see some actual racing, and as of recording this podcast, word is that Supercross is coming back, and the details are supposed to be coming out later today. So it looks like we might be getting back to somewhat of a normal life. I hope this podcast has kept you somewhat entertained during the lockdown. We will make sure we're pumping out episodes as we go forward. The Impakt results studio and office is opening back up starting next week. We're going GNCC racing with the EMTB team this weekend down in Georgia. Next week we come back and the office is getting back open, which means I'll have my video production team back, which means we will be able to start rolling out the video versions of the Moto Marketing Podcast. So we're going to kick that off with Andy White from FXR. We've got Stasic lined up. We've got a special guest from Stasic that's going to be coming on. Already got those in the can, and we'll have a lot more guests coming to you very soon. So I appreciate y'all listening. Let's get into the episode with Racetech Suspension and Engines, Chris Riesenberg.
Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by RacerX, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by RacerX, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by RacerX.
As promised, we've got Chris Riesenberg from Racetech Suspension on the line with us today. I'm excited to have him on. You guys have probably heard him on the Pulp Show, as well as various other shows that he's been a part of in the past, and just yet another very knowledgeable, marketing-minded individual that is in the sport. And Chris plays a massive role in getting your attention on the Racetech suspension brand. And man, I want to talk to you about it today. So welcome to the show, Chris. I'm looking forward to chatting with you and appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. And I want to clarify right away, it's Racetech suspension and engines now. My engine guy, Andrew, would not be pumped if I didn't say that.
Yeah, that is. I know that is my fault, and for sure. So, well, let's. I'd like to dive into that as far as expanding the brand and then getting into the engine side. So we'll definitely cover that as well. But for somebody that might be somewhat new to the sport or new to the behind the scenes aspect of the sport, that's not super familiar with you or kind of what your responsibility is, kind of give us a once over of what it is that you do at Racetech.
Well, my title is Director of Marketing, but really it's a motorcycle industry company. And like so many of them, it's a small company and we wear many hats. And the truth be told is I'm not really directing anyone except myself. There's no more marketing department beyond me. And that strings from everywhere from doing website stuff to social media stuff to dealing with advertising in magazines to managing our brand as far as across our Racetech centers and event support and activation. It's something different pretty much every day, which is part of what makes it fun. But it also, obviously, you can only spend so many hours of a day on each piece of it. So with more people and more, obviously, backing your money and whatnot, you can always do way more cool things. But my goal is to try to make the brand cool, make it fun, and get it out there to the people.
Yeah, and I think that's from a marketing person's point of view. I mean, that's the difference between a lifestyle brand and just another product. I mean, there are a lot of companies that do suspension and engine work in this industry, but it's almost like there's levels to the game, and there are certain brands that somebody's a fan of the brand so much so that they're going to wear that logo on the shirt. And I really do feel like Racetech, and there might be one or two others, but really Racetech is the one in the suspension and engine side of things that I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that on a shirt. Whereas that takes it to more than just it's a quality product. It's part of the Moto lifestyle, and I've talked about it before. FMF has that shininess factor to it. It's more than just performance products. It's a brand that people relate to with their lifestyle. And I feel like that is something that you're striving really hard to make Racetech become that. And you're doing a great job. It is already. But what are some of the things that you see as important to make it more than just performance suspension and engines, to make it something that people want to relate to and rock that logo? Do you have one or two things that you really kind of look to as far as being really important with that?
For sure. One of the things that's a challenge, and it also works in our favor and as an advantage, is the company's been around for 35 years. And you mentioned FMF, and Paul Thede and Don Imler started right around the same time. They're actually really good buddies. And so I have to withhold the history of the company, but also the history of the company can make it feel old and dated at times. So it's finding that balance there. And I actually look at a lot of FMF stuff and what Little D does over there. I think he does a fantastic job. And honestly, combining with companies like that as well, like when we can collab on stuff, that helps us as well because they're such a well-respected and established brand. So it's really finding the right spots to get involved in, the right people to get involved with. And on like the event side of things, picking and choosing events to be a part of, not just the typical Supercross, Motocross, and on the pro side, and then the amateur nationals, but we try to hit some regional grassroots events and not just show up and set up a booth, but actually boots on the ground and be involved and activate and be part of the event and make a cool experience. Stuff like that. Everything we do though is based around word of mouth, and that the first thing that Paul Thede, the owner, told me when I started was, no matter what you do, everything's based around word of mouth. So whether it's podcast stuff and associating ourselves with the Steve Mathis's, Chris Kiefer's, Daniel Blair's of the world, right, who all have a great following and a great brand and a great reputation. They help spread the word for me, and they make us cool because people associate them with being really cool people. On the YouTube side, we have Dio and Jeff Walker and a group of guys like that we're associated with because they have their following and they're their cool guy, and it's really working with those guys and those types of people. And then, of course you have your traditional advertising as far as websites and magazines and that side of things. And we're part of it, But what we focus on there is getting people on the product to talk about the product. And sometimes I've seen it's just as valuable to put a vet 30-plus guy on Vital MX on a bike versus putting on some guy from a magazine, because it's all about their voice and their following and their way to convey a message. So, yeah, it's just associating with the right people. And, our brand philosophy is a little bit different than a lot, but I think it earns a lot of respect. It's really blue collar as far as, we don't come in and write a big paycheck to buy a championship. It's just not the way that we do things. Instead, we spread our support out across a ton of the privateer guys, the working class heroes, and it gives me a lot of different people to talk about the brand, a lot of different personalities. And on our R&D and tech side, it gives us a ton of development. Instead of focusing on just, say, working on just a Kawasaki or just a Honda setup all the time, with your R&D team, we're working on everything from Suzuki's to KTM's to Huskies to, Hondas, Yamahas, etc., because we have guys on all those brands. And it's real world data too, because, I think it'd be really difficult to take a Ken Roczen setting and translate that to a real world rider. Whereas a guy who's just barely making the night show, that setting translates really close to a lot of your local A and B riders, It's not that far off and that much different. So it's kind of using our resources to support guys that maybe are being overlooked by a lot of other people, but it's valuable for us both on a marketing and a R&D standpoint, which is really nice. It works out well.
Yeah, I think something that I have noticed just over the years, in far before you and I had ever spoke, you guys, you do a really, really good job of omni-channel marketing. And what I mean for that, because I know that's kind of marketing nerd lingo, you guys are everywhere at once. And I think your expectations of the what to get from where you're at in different areas is correct. Meaning, I see you in traditional print with Racer X. You're doing event activation. If you guys do targeted digital, like you're everywhere, and your expectations for those channels are correct. There are a lot of people that have the wrong expectations for certain platforms, and then they get let down. Meaning, if somebody advertises in Racer X, they don't understand that the value add there is it's brand, it's brand association, it's brand awareness. You're getting eyeballs on the Race Tech Suspension and Engines brand on one of the magazines that has survived, that not only that's thriving. That doesn't mean it's going to drive massive sales. That's not the initial goal there. It's brand awareness and recognition. When you're at these events, a lot of people will be like, man, I'm dumping $20,000 to go to this event. And then they look at it as far as, what did I bring back from that? That's not the goal. It's to introduce people to the product. It's to get them to feel it, to see the quality. And then with social, when I see people going to targeted social, they're spending money and they're trying to get the complete wrong thing from that. I want to spend, run a Facebook ad and grow my following. That's the wrong thing to be spending money on. If you're going to spend money on a Facebook or Instagram ad, it needs to be, hey, we generated 65 new customers from that, not we generated 65,000 new followers. You guys are everywhere at once. How do you determine what you're looking for from your affiliation with one of Racer X's video shows versus their print ads, versus when you go to a race to do event activation? Do you guys feel like you have the right expectations for those different mediums, or is that something you're still trying to figure out what you want from what platform, if that makes sense?
A lot of it is I'm not scared to fail, and I'm willing to, and I have the permission from my bosses to be able to try stuff.
That's awesome.
And if it doesn't work, then we back away from it, and a lot of what I do as far as even the Racer X side of things, I mean, we can talk about that on any facet, is it's really based around relationships and people. And the reason, in my opinion, the Racer X brand and print magazine has survived is simply because of the people and the relationships. And, the value of the ad goes way beyond the ad. It actually goes through the connection with the brand and opportunities that opens up. And so when I work with a Racer X, I don't just work with Racer X, but I work on their event support side. I work on their Racer TV side. We work with all facets of the company. And if I see an opportunity that looks like it catches my eye and my attention, then I say, hey, we're going to go for this. I mean, we started it with the weed show with the video stuff. That's something that I really hadn't done before. And I was just talking to my bosses the other day, and they said, "What's this weed show thing? We're hearing about it a lot." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome feedback." So now it's like, okay, we'll keep that program going, and I'll look at other things like it. I had the Jeff Walker YouTube thing come up. Last summer, I stumbled across this channel. And I was like, "Man, I want to be part of that." Reached out to a mutual contact of ours and got that going, and it worked really well. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that works. So is there anyone else in that space that makes sense? And turns out I had a relationship already with Dio. We've already done some stuff previously together, but not on his new YouTube platform, really. And so I reached out to him and, maximized on it. So now I'm also looking, is there other opportunities on YouTube that are really good value? Same thing with events of, when we go to events and I talk about boots on the ground and like doing different things, I had really big success with the old Verb Classic races by doing like a factory support sponsorship for a full year as an award. It was probably one of the most valuable things that we did early on in my days at Racetech. Again, because of the people and the relationships that we were able to develop, and it gave us some really cool, unique content that no one else had, and it really fits our brand. Our whole support the privateer proven, and that's what we were doing with those awards. We were going and selecting a kid that showed a lot of talent but didn't have the resources or the support and could use the help. So they're always thankful. Well, that built a really good relationship with somebody that believes in the brand, and those were long-term relationships. So now when I go to a lot of the events that aren't amateur nationals and that aren't nationals or Supercross, we give away similar stuff like that. And it's based around building a relationship, not just giving a kid a certificate or a 20% off deal or something like that. It's actually getting involved more deeply with them, building a relationship and treating somebody like no other company really that's the size of ours can do, or does do, I should say. It's a different experience for them.
There's a old cliche saying that a lot of people in business have heard. I maybe John Maxwell said it. I'm not sure, but people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And I feel like everything you're saying, it really stems back to that. Like your decision in marketing is how can we build a relationship with media partners like RacerX? How can we make the consumer feel like they know us? They know the brand more than just the logo. They know who we are. They know the quality. They feel like we're that guy going out and riding on the weekend, which you guys are. And I feel like the choices you all have made, which I want to talk about specifically the YouTube side of things, the choices you guys have made with who you're going to partner and work with have played heavily into that. The RacerX YouTube channel, even though that's RacerX, I consider that influencer marketing because you're there to watch weeds. You're not there to watch necessarily just the RacerX logo. You're tuning in to see what Jason Wygant is talking about, and Jason has just a way that with his viewer that people just tune in and watch. He's exciting. He keeps your attention, and he does just a masterful job of tying in sponsors and partners like Racetech. And then it's very different with Jeff Walker, and then even more different once you go over to Daniel Olszewski, which is Dio. Really quickly, let's go back to measuring in what you're getting out of it and what your expectations are. So you'd mentioned that your boss had mentioned, hey, we're hearing a lot about this weed show. What else other than that, if there is anything, have you seen from that type of a partnership with the weed show that has helped you realize, hey, that was a really good decision? Have you guys been able to see direct sales come from it, or just the brand mentioning? What is it that you're looking at there?
Well, one of the things that we have is when you fill out a service request form with us, it's the old school, where did you hear about us from question. And more often than not, that's where we're getting a lot of data. We do coupon codes and stuff like that as well, and discount codes. And again, I set it up with Pulp when we first started. We were one of the pretty early sponsors in that program. I set up a coupon code because the podcast thing for the moto industry was brand new. And I was like, well, we're going to try this because I enjoy listening to the show, and Steve has that. Listening to him makes him someone you trust. And so it goes back to who you like and trust. We're selling a performance product. There's a lot of different options out there, and they're not all the same. They're all very different, in fact. So you have to create trust within your consumer to get them to go that direction. So Steve had that personality set up a coupon code and said, hey, let's give this a shot. And that's the tracking on that side. So it varies. If I go to an event support, if we support an event for multiple years, I go around and I look at stickers on forks. It starts there. And as the years go by, if there's more stickers on the forks that from the previous years, then I'm doing my job correctly, and that event's worthwhile to me.
So something I hear there though is patience. Like it's not, well, we did this for 4 months and I didn't see a 1000x ROI, which you should have those expectations for certain things like digital marketing. When somebody hires us, if we're not hitting 2, 3, 4, 5, 600% ROI quickly, like within 6 to 9 months, we will get fired. But it doesn't work that way with other things like branding with Racer X and affiliating yourself with a race. Like that takes time. So you're mentioning like over time, year after year, if I come back and I'm seeing more stickers on forks, that's an indicator for you that it's a good decision to continue with?
Well, absolutely. And it's a lot easier to be a patient when you're not investing so much into just the event, but you're actually investing in the people. Yeah. A good example would be I had a long relationship with Andrew Campo from when he was at Verb Moto. And when he started Meta, the print title, there, I mean, he pitched me what it was, and we became pretty close friends. And he's telling me about it, and I said, whatever it is, I'm putting our brand as part of it because I believe in him and the person, and the product will follow. And I invest in relationships. It's a lot easier to be patient when you know that you're dealing with a relationship where they have your best interest in mind as well. And you'll see that with the people that we work with year in and year out is because we're investing in people. I did it with Kiefer when he went out on his Kiefer Test adventure, splitting up from Dirt Rider. I called him and said, hey, whatever you end up doing, I want to be part of it. I want to support it. And because I believed in him and I knew he would have a following and he was going to put the time in to make sure it was worth our time and our while.
Sure.
He's not going to steer us the wrong direction because he's a good person. So, if I trust them as a person, then also my consumers can trust them as a person. And again, it's just investing in relationships is extremely important. That's the way that we go about things because we're trying to spread word of mouth, and I want the right people representing our brand. So on the YouTube side, it's really the same thing. If I watch the YouTube thing, the deal with Daniel on the Dio channel came up really, I'd known him, but I was watching his videos and I was like, and this is something really different than anything else that we do. Because he isn't your guy going out racing nationals. He's your weekend warrior. He enjoys riding dirt bikes. He's building community around him. He's supporting his local racetracks and enjoying being there and sitting on his tailgate bench racing with his buddies in between motos. That's something completely different. And that's honestly a large part of the market of motocross racers that are out there, right? Like most guys aren't going to race the nationals. Yeah, there's a lot of them that chase the Loretta's thing and stuff. That's still only 10% of your actual consumers, if that,
right,
that are out there and buying our product and whatnot. I mean, you go through the other thing that we can look at as well for data is we have our settings are all come out of our digital valving search, and so I look at the type of settings and the type of riders that are coming, that are using our product every time that they install a Gold Valve kit, and it's not A and B motocross setups. It is a lot more of the weekend warrior type stuff, trail riding, older bikes, not brand new bikes, stuff like that. And that's also data that we have that works in our favor as far as where we go and what we do.
So even with Jeff Walker, I mean, we talk about with Dio, he's not a pro, not racing nationals. But even with Jeff, I think what's intriguing with him is, yes, he is a pro. He does race nationals and he qualifies for many of them. But he's still that person that a lot of us can relate to, as opposed to, I don't know, Troll Train's, Martin's vlogs are amazing, but he's one of those guys that, like, we know we're not going to be that fast. There's zero relatable to him, and I really do think there's value in the Weekend Warrior, which is your Dio, and others that are out there, and then the pro that's almost that privateer, that guy that's fighting to make it, that's probably going to have a regular day job in the coming years. Was that strategic? Is that really why you decided to work with them rather than approaching some of the top tier big name pros that aren't as relatable, or was there something else behind that?
A lot of it becomes down to them being real, and also it's okay for them to show struggles, right? Like the YouTube thing I accidentally stumbled into quite a while back was during the Vermoto days with Derek Anderson and Tucker Say doing a Driven to Ride series, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it was phenomenal. And it honestly launched a lot of kind of copycat series after that of people trying to do the same thing. And no one else could really get the following or pull it off. And it wasn't because of film quality or editing quality or any of that stuff, because honestly, it was not that good as far as that was concerned. But it was the content was because it was real, because there were struggles and they were okay showing that they had struggles, stuff along those lines. And again, I think that builds character and relationship with your audience. Yeah. So that's the reason that I go that route with those guys. And I'm still looking every day as far as, is there other guys out there that make sense for us to be involved with? And then also you got to realize we need to work with guys that they're involved with their choices and suspension and stuff like that. Sure. The guy that's on the race team, they show up and ride the motorcycle. They might make some tweaks, but it really wasn't their choice to choose the person working on their bike. They chose a team as a whole for a bike as a whole. Whereas with the Jeff Walker, we're working with him because just like we trusted in him to build the brand, he trusted in us to do a good job for him. And he stayed with us for the same reason. And, we stayed with him for the same reason. It's a mutually beneficial relationship there.
Yeah, YouTube's a very it's an interesting space because, you have these people that pop up that if there wasn't a platform like YouTube, you wouldn't have the opportunity to bring value to somebody like Dio or Jeff and then bring value to you if it were just what it was back in, even back in the Carmichael and Stewart days. It was, you watch it on TV on the weekends, you read it in the magazines, and then that's it. There really was no influencer, wasn't a thing. So, I want to be respectful of your time, but I really want to touch on one final thing. So obviously Racetech suspension is what it was, but now it's Racetech suspension and engines. Were you, I apologize, I'm not super up on the timeline of when you came in to play and when it went from suspension to suspension and engines. What was that transition like? You guys are a leader in this space, and then you decide to kind of expand your offerings, and you're now one of the leaders in the engine side of things as well. What went into continuing the consistency of that brand in the eyes of the consumer when that was added on to it?
Yeah, so I was part of it, part of Racetech when the engine services department launched. And just I'll try to make it real quick.
No, you're fine.
But Racetech actually started as an engine company, believe it or not. Back in the day, Paul Teed was an engine guy. He added suspension and then realized that he could do a lot more with suspension than engines to help people out, and eventually phased out the engine side of things. And then he brought in Rob Brown, who's our head of R&D, who also was honestly a better engine guy than suspension guy. He had his own company back in Illinois and was looking for a change and moved to California. And then the opportunity actually came up, and the reason the Racetech Engine Services Department was reborn was all of Rob's old equipment that he had sold off from his company became available to purchase again, and at a very good price. And we purchased it, and it sat in our shop for, I think, a year and a half without being touched or used because we couldn't find the right person to run the department. Rob was too busy to do it himself. And so again, I'm just investing in people and personalities. Eventually Andrew Flores, who runs that department now, became available, extremely sharp, but willing to learn as well. Because it's one of those things of, as a company, we're learning every day, and we're doing our best to learn every day. And there's always better to be found. We don't have an ego. And if you look at, sorry to keep going off subject a little, but the relationships thing that I always keep talking about, that starts in-house with hiring our employees. We're not hiring people for what they already know. Right. We're hiring them for who the person that they are, because they can learn and they can be taught and that side of things. So Andrew became available. Rob taught him a lot. Rob was formally educated by some really, really well-known guys, the number one induction guy in the world. And then eventually down the road, Rob actually brought Andrew to be taught by the same person as well, and continue to learn and build that relationship. But on a marketing standpoint, as a brand, it was really different for me because our goal was to not build full engines in-house and do engine services for all the other engine builders out there. So basically supporting our competitors, which is similar to what we do on the suspension side, is most suspension companies out there are buying products and parts and pieces from us. They're not actually. So while on the suspension side, we do build full suspension, I don't ever really look at guys as competitors. I look at them as partners because I want them to buy and sell product. Well, for me, it was a marketing thing of, okay, well, if we're doing a porting, we're porting ahead, and then I'm sending it out to a lot of the companies actually don't want us to mention their names. So I'm not going to mention any of the names. We're sending it to that company. They don't want our name on it. They want their name on it. How do I build that brand in that market, and how do I get it out there? Also didn't want to commit the foul of just giving a bunch of stuff away and it having zero value. Mm-hmm. Plus, it's hard to run a successful business when all the work you're doing is for free, and it was a one-man department. So that was quite a learning experience for me. What we did is we selected a couple people that we were very close with, we had long-term relationships with, and that had good followings. I would say a large portion of the reason that business has been successful is our relationship with Chris Bluffs. He's been fantastic, not just putting in results and proving the product works, and being a believer in it. And I mean, he won a title down in Australia, a Supercross title with it, which is great. And put in some very good rides, leading and whole shotting Supercrosses last year on our engines, and stuck with it this year. That's great. But more importantly, he brought us a really good dealer to install and sell the product. Built a relationship there where he believed in it. So that's one part. Again, he had a relationship with Chris Kiefer, and he's a big reason that Kiefer gave us a shot, because there was a time that I had a good relationship personally with Chris, but he wouldn't let us come on his podcast initially to sponsor it. He said, I only have companies on here that I believe in. And he was not a fan of the Racetech product previously. We had to prove to him that the Racetech product is not the same one that it used to be, that he used to dislike. So I had to prove it to him. And the only reason I really got over that hump was his relationship with Bloss. And Bloss is like, you really need to try this stuff. It's really good. And so that worked. But that's people. Yeah. People's the big thing. I put out, I have a couple of support guys that do really well. We pick and choose our stuff, and again, patience. Honestly, it was, this thing's going to grow, and once word gets out about the quality of work that we're doing, it'll go. And it really actually hit finally. I think we're about 4.5 years in now, of actually really putting stuff out, because the first 6 to 8 months, Andrew didn't really do any customer work or anything. He was building fixtures and whatnot for R&D, because a lot of his job is R&D and such. So we're finally this summer, and over the winter, this past winter, we started to finally see the results of our hard work, as far as on the business and customer side. Got to the point where the department expanded from 1 to 2 people. Mm-hmm. And that's a big jump, right? Like when you're not just covering one salary, but making that person in department profitable, and then, we have to add another person. That's a big jump.
Absolutely.
To commit to and do, but the work's steady and constant enough there. And we have the customer relationships, which our customers, like I said, a lot of them they're engine builders. We will do stuff directly for guys. They can send ahead to us and we'll do it directly for them. It doesn't have to come from like a dealer account or an engine builder, but obviously the dealer and engine builder accounts are the ones that are nice, because they're so consistent, because we're servicing all their customers.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of stuff, and something that I keep getting this consistent vibe from you about how, how you guys operate, the kind of the loose leash that you're allowed to have with your marketing. You guys approach things with such kind of a calm, cool, collected, like, patience. Like, hey, let's test this. Those are both things that, if you don't have that, if you don't have the patience and you don't have the ability or the willingness or the permission to test something, it's never going to work. So many people are looking for that quick hit, quick fix from their marketing, that they don't give any platform a fair chance. And then also, you've mentioned it multiple times, you guys really look for the opportunities that give you the ability to build a relationship, which I think is really cool. Relationship with the vendors. So be it Racer X, a relationship with your customers. Those are all big takeaways that, whether it's a big brand listening to this episode or somebody that is small, starting up something, those are the key takeaways that I think are super valuable to take from this episode. Hey, I just remembered something. I looked it up on Amazon. I wanted to bring this up. I think it's pretty unique before I forget. So I watch a YouTube series that YouTube videos that Fox Suspension puts out. I'm a big mountain biker, and they have a mountain bike series called Dialed, and they've been putting out some unique content to where they talk to their lead suspension tech. His name's Jordy, and he's telling you how to dial in your mountain bike suspension and all of that. And somebody had asked him, are there any good books about suspension theory and tuning? And he thought for a minute, and he was like, you know what, there's a book by this guy named Paul Feed. He's the guy that started Race Tech, and I looked it up on Amazon, and it's an old book. It's called Race Tech's Motorcycle Suspension Bible. And Jordy, who's one of the most respected suspension techs in mountain biking, swore by this book and said that's what kind of was his jumping off point to teach him what he knows, which has turned him into a kind of a living legend right now in mountain biking. Did you even know that Paul wrote that book? Because it is an old book by looking at the cover.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the book, we still sell them.
Do you really? That's awesome.
They're very common, and just like everything we do is Paul's very outside the box. The Race Tech motto of gold valves and that side of things, everyone told him not to do it. He's crazy because you're giving away all your secrets.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the book was written. He also teaches seminars once a year as well. It's a week-long course of here's how you build suspension. Well, why are you teaching everyone to compete with you? Well, the business, instead of focusing on, hey, we're going to service all these customers, no, instead we're going to teach you how to service all these customers. See, instead of us having 100,000 people that we deal with 1,000 people.
Right.
That's more than that. But and each of them can deal with 1,000 people. And then we'll provide you the parts and pieces and tools and education and resources to do that. And we can treat customers way better, give them a way better experience. Our business isn't just, we look at our service department as a marketing and R&D department, not as a big piece of the business. It does make profit, of course, but that's not the goal of that department. That department's built to create products and pieces and then give me something to market off of. And the business is selling parts and pieces to everyone else. So that's where the book comes into that whole thing, is that combined with seminars. And if you go on our website, it's a little ancient. Now, that's actually a project I'm working on now, is building a new one behind the scenes. But there's some really, really good content up there under like the instructions side of things where, there's step-by-step instructions to rebuild and tune suspension. And there's so much information there. You can look up spring rates, all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome. That's cool to hear that it's still a piece of your guys' puzzle. Because when I saw it, I could tell it was an older, just by the cover, I was like, this book's been around for a while. So I was like, well, maybe it was something Paul did back in the day and it's kind of fallen by the wayside. But the fact that you guys still use it as part of your strategy and you're in the process of updating it, that's cool. It's very cool. Well, that's awesome, man. Again, I appreciate you being on the show. A lot of really good stuff that I think people, if they're listening to this more than just to pass the time and really want to take some good takeaways, I encourage you to go back and listen to it a second time, because there's some important and valuable stuff in here that Chris talked about. And I encourage you to follow Race Tech and follow Chris. Chris, you just got back into riding after several years off, and I've enjoyed kind of watching your journey back into the sport. So where can people follow you if you want that attention online, and where can we follow Race Tech?
The Race Tech Instagram is probably the best place to go online, and that's at Race Tech Inc. INC, with no spaces or anything in that. And then I'm Checkers with a Z. 448, and I try to keep it fun. I'm enjoying riding dirt bikes, and we do this for fun, and if I can put a smile on people's faces, it's so worth it.
No doubt. Well, man, I appreciate you being on the show with us today, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpact.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.